having to send his wife away. I mean, all of the things that we think would make me so happy. If I just could be king, right? Got a little shack, I'd like a bigger house. If I live in a bigger house, then I think, oh, if I only had the mansion. I live in the mansion, I think, oh, if only I had the palace. If only I were king. You think, if only I had this family, if only I had these riches, only if I had this opportunity. But we're given in the scriptures, I believe actually quite purposely. I believe that actually the divine has given us these stories for very specific reasons, such that we never are under any illusion that spirituality is somehow an inoculation against life happening. And even the difficult parts of life. Death, loss, tragedy, betrayal, horrendous betrayal. So on what level do we think that the same divine universe that deprives Lord Ram of his kingdom is really worried about whether I get my job back? I mean, that really, like, that's the measuring stick we're going to use? The same divine that deprives him of his wife and his children? I'm going to just know the right mantra or do the right puja and suddenly my job's going to come back? Clearly that's not the teaching. Clearly the teaching of these epics, of the troubles that they go through, and then the kathas that we're given, right? I mean, we're given not only the scriptures, but then we're given a culture that says, don't just read them. Spend 7 days, 9 days, a month here. Sri Murlidharji Maharaj is giving a month-long Sri Ram Katha. Why is it so important to listen to these? Well, in addition to the actual divine teachings and the mantras and that come out of their mouths, there's the teaching of just their lives. There's the implicit teaching that says, being divine, forget just being spiritual, but being divine, being God on earth, is not the way to avoid these troubles. In fact, I have created this on purpose to show you these are not the problems. The problem is inside you, in your mind, and in your own reactions. And that is what brings us the misery. So when you pray, or when you do your pujas, or when you chant your mantras, or when you, instead of doing it, oh God, give me my job back, let it be the prayer that says, oh God, give me that power of understanding, of resilience, of maintaining my divine connection myself in the midst of such hardship that Lord Ram had, that Sita Ma had. Give me that. That's the magic. Is not about, oh, fix all my problems, but give me the ability not to lose myself, not to react, not to allow something from outside to make me miserable. If you get your job back, wonderful. If you don't get it back, also wonderful, because what the universe has in store for you is your own awakening. And is it going to happen with this job? Maybe. If so, you'll get the job back. If that job is going to be some kind of an impediment to your path, you're going to lose it. But not out of spite, not to make you miserable, and you just have to sit and wait until you get it back. They weren't sent off into the forest to be miserable. They were sent for a whole karmic reason. I'm not going to go into all of that now, but the point is we know, obviously, whether we look at Ramayana, whether we look at Mahabharata, whether we look at any of these stories, nowhere did anything happen just because someone deserved to be miserable. It's always so that the karmic tapestry can be properly woven with all of its individual threads that interlink and interlock and together create this exquisite, extraordinary tapestry of our lives. And so if you find yourself miserable about something outside of you, especially if it's been 7 years, in the case of this questioner and his job, ask yourself whether there might be a different alternative to misery. Not a different alternative to having lost your job, because you don't have any control over that. That was your boss's decision. But do you have a different alternative to misery? Is there another way to react to this situation? Ask yourself that. And in that, when you open your heart and the doors open to all of the other possibilities, what you'll find is not only are you no longer miserable, but you're going to find another job. And at some point later in your life, you're going to be able to look back and say, aha, now I understand. Thank God all of that happened so that all of this would happen, and therefore that's why I am where I am. And that's what it's about. It's not about getting frozen in a moment and saying, oh God, I've got all these problems. Okay, I'm just going to sit here and be miserable till it ends. It's okay. The universe has given me these clearly for a reason, clearly for my own growth. And the prayer simply becomes, how can I grow? What do I need to learn from this? How do I expand? And that is the only way to know when your misery is going to end, is when you start to see things in that way. Any other questions here before I take any other in advance? Yes?
Sorry, I'm not sure it is related to the things what you said.
It doesn't have to be related to that. We're on a new topic. It could be, but we're also on a new topic.
Thanks for that. Are we living for a job or living for a time?
Are we living for a job or living for?
For death.
For death. Neither. We're definitely not living for our jobs, and we're also not living for death. Because death isn't here in the present moment. And so to live for anything that isn't here in the present moment isn't what we're here for. So obviously we're not living for our jobs. I mean, you don't need me to go into that. We know that our jobs are not who we are. We know it's a role we play. If you find one that you enjoy, wonderful. You find one that is of benefit to the universe in some way, triply wonderful. But as I always say, sometimes, a lot of us when we think about our purpose or we think about our dharma here, a lot of us mistake purpose and dharma with our career. And so we literally think, oh, I should be living for my job because my job is my purpose or my job is my dharma. Not always. Sometimes it is. I've met doctors who absolutely, being a doctor is their dharma. You try to get them to meditate, they're like, I can't meditate, I only meditate when I do surgery. I'm more meditative doing surgery than sitting in a dark room. No problem. Wonderful. I've met people who are gardeners. Absolutely their dharma. And you know it because they touch things and everything grows. I've met people who are artists or writers who clearly that's their dharma. They're here with the purpose of conveying something to the world, giving a message to the world through music, through art, through writing. But these are people, it's very rare, much rarer than you'd think. And the tragedy is that so many of us have this sense of, oh, my job or my career has to be my purpose, has to be my dharma. No, it doesn't. In some cases, it may simply be what you need to do to put food on the table because that's your duty to your family. And so you don't want to start trying to figure out whether being the mailman or the gas station attendant or whatever you may be that feels kind of lowly and not so important, how could that be your purpose or dharma? Well, it isn't. But putting money on the table is your duty to your family. And you don't necessarily need a job that is what you live for in order to do it. Obviously, it should be tolerable. You don't want to be miserable in the job, as in the first question. But the issue really is, clearly we're not living for that. Clearly we're not living for that. We're doing the job. We'll come back to living for death in a moment, but staying on the aspect of our jobs for a moment. One of the things we emphasize and hear all the time is we're here to be a tool in God's hands. That is our dharma. That is our purpose, is to be a tool in God's hands. And sometimes that tool is something you can be paid to do. Most of the time it's not. And that's great. No problem at all. So your dharma may be, for example, to be the first father to send his daughter to school. Maybe that's your purpose. Because maybe in your village or your city, girls don't go to school. And so you get up every day and you are a gas station attendant or whatever you do to bring home the money so that your daughter doesn't have to go out begging or doing some other manual labor so that there's food in the house so that she can go to school. So you go to do this job. But the job itself isn't where you should be looking for the purpose or the dharma. You realize it's here. In many cases, our dharma is much more intricate than just something as specific as to be this or to be that. And it also changes through life. You've got a dharma to do something at one point and then at another time to do something else. I deeply believe that the universe doesn't necessarily want only one thing from each person. So we definitely don't live for our jobs, for sure. We absolutely live for our dharma, though, which, as I said, is to be a tool in God's hands. That's what we live for. But it could be on the way to work. Maybe on the way to work, I pass these poor people. I have money, I give them. I don't have money, but it troubles me. So I try to figure out, okay, what can I do for them exactly? Maybe I'm not rich, maybe I don't have the money to actually give them, but maybe I actually, in my office, in my job, come up with a plan, come up with a program. We get them off the street, we build a school for their kids, whatever it may be. And in that way we start to understand what our dharma is, which isn't necessarily about a school, but it's about service. It's about being a tool in God's hands. You're on the way to the office, you have this feeling. Instead of pushing it out of your mind and saying, no, gotta just get to the office. I don't have the money. If God wanted me to help, he would have given me a fat wallet and lots of money, and I would have had it to give them. But we realize, well, what do I have? I have creativity, I have compassion, I have initiative, I have tenacity, I have commitment, I have all these things, I have a lot of friends. And what do you know, in a few years, your entire community no longer has a homeless person. So there's an infinite number of ways that our own dharma is going to play out. Each of us is going to be a different tool in God's hands in different times, in different ways. But that's what we live for, because through that is where our awakening happens. This is what Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, when finally Arjuna says to him, well, all right, if doing good deeds gets me good karma, doing bad deeds gets me bad karma, they don't cancel each other out. I've got to keep coming back here until my karmic bank account is empty. Good account, bad account, either way. What's the way out? Right? I mean, even if I do only good things and I get only good karma, well, that's still a karmic bank account I've got to come back to clear. And if ultimately my goal is moksha, is liberation, what do I do? So I'm not going to do anything then. So Lord Krishna says, but you're still acting. Even you sit down, you do nothing, you're still acting. What do we do? And this is where he says, whatever you do, surrender it to me. Do it as a tool in my hands. Don't do it as an act by you, for you, whether for good karma, bad karma, selfish motives, selfless motives, whatever it may be. Don't do any of that, because all that's doing is filling your bank accounts. The good and the bad. Whatever you do, surrender it to me. Be a tool in my hands. And that is the only way to actually be free of accruing this karma that's keeping you stuck. So we live, so you said, what do we live for, the job or the death? Well, definitely not the job. We're going to come to the death in a moment. But what we're living for is that freedom, that awakening. How do we do it? By being a tool in God's hands. By surrendering to God. All of our expectations, all of our attachments, all of our desires. It does not mean, by the way, that we become lazy and complacent, indifferent, apathetic, any of those things. In fact, we become even more connected, more committed, because we understand, I'm not doing this for me. In terms of my bank account or my personal well-being or my personal family. This is truly a matter of my awakening. This is a matter of the purpose of my life. And so every minute matters. And then it becomes how we're doing what we do, not what we're doing. Who's the I doing it? So it's not about I have this job or this one or that one. I don't like this one. I want a better one. It becomes about the way to the office. It becomes after the office. It becomes the weekends. It becomes from your desk to the bathroom, from the bathroom to the... And every minute of the day, purpose, dharma. And then death. Well, as I said, obviously we're definitely not living for death. However, we cannot live life unless we are deeply aware of death and deeply connected to death. Because otherwise we live in this illusion that we're invincible. We live in this illusion that death isn't going to come. We live in this illusion that it's all just about what I can acquire, accumulate during this life. And this is where holding death in our awareness is so important. Because when I know, it could be any minute, any moment, there's no guarantee. We live very differently. Very differently. Think back to the time that you lost a loved one most recently, or the deepest one. When a deep, dear loved one passed away. Think back to that time for a moment. Or think back to the time that you or a loved one was diagnosed with a terminal illness, even if miraculously you lived, but you had a doctor say you're going to die. How does that change how you live? Like this, right? Instantaneously, no course required, no certificate required, no book required. Instantaneously. Suddenly, all of the nonsense no longer makes a difference. Suddenly, all of the little things that always bother us, they don't matter. Suddenly, all of those things, we let go. So all of the attachments that we have to how the world is going to be, the minute that death is in our face, they disappear. That job, that money, that this person being nice to me, that person being mean to me, that, all of that stuff, it's gone when death is in our face. And suddenly we know all that matters. And what matters? What matters when death is in our face? If you only had 1 day left to live, say you only had 1 hour left to live. If you knew you only had 1 hour left to live, what would you do with that hour? I'm sorry? What would you do?
Think about God, she said.
Think about God. Yeah, think about God, of course. Anybody would do anything else? You've got 1 hour to live.
Ask forgiveness to all.
Ask forgiveness from all. Yes, absolutely. Anything else? Love. Right? So, love, God, connection to God, forgiveness for what we've done, so we become humble, aware that we've made mistakes, aware that being arrogant and full of ego and stubborn doesn't matter, that what matters is that connection. And there you have it. This is what matters in life. So we actually know it. And that's why holding death in our awareness is so important, even though we're not living for death. Because when I know I have 1 hour to live, I love, I get connected to God, and I let go of petty grudges, and I ask forgiveness of anything that anybody's holding against me. I'm humble. This is how we need to live. Don't wait till you've got 1 hour left to die. Tragically, most of that time you're unconscious, hooked up to machines and on all kinds of drugs that, just ease you out. Very few of us are given a gift of actually knowing, I've got 1 hour left, I'm conscious, I'm able to say what I want to say, I'm not all, doped up on morphine or something, I'm not in so much pain that I cannot even think. Most of us are not given 1 hour like that or a day like that. But we have every day like that. We have these hours like that. So let us live in such a way that when that last hour comes, we're not panicked. Oh my God, I'm on morphine. I can't love people. Oh my God, I'm on morphine. I can't say I'm sorry. Oh my God, I'm on morphine. I can't connect to God. Do it now. Because you don't know when that last hour is going to come. So when we already know what's important, do it now. And that's the role that death plays in our life. So we don't live for it, but we live with it, with the awareness of it.
Thank you.
Of course. Of course.